Hi guys, Aceface here, back for Twisted Dice, and I'm back with another video. We're in a slightly different location today, so hopefully you can still see me clear. I will do some post-editing to try and make it look even better, but we are working with what we've got at the moment. There are some changes going on behind the scenes, and hopefully you will see the the studio area that I work in look better in future videos. And I'm still working on the sound, so thank you very much for all you guys that have commented on the sound not being loud enough, you not being able to hear it, or slight hisses and what have you. I am working on it, so bear with me. If you do like this video, please don't forget to hit that like button, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We've just hit our 10,000 subscribers and are fast moving onto 11,000 and onwards and upwards. So thank you very much for everyone that supported us. We really do appreciate it, and keep up the support and the amazing comments. We really do appreciate it, so thanks very much. And you've got some cool Tyranids to see. Look, that'll hopefully keep you guys that are all kind of get frustrated that there's no aesthetics going on in my videos. So you've got some more cool stuff to look at today. But anyway, guys, let's jump into this video, and I want to talk about Tyranids. We're going to talk about some basic building blocks to building your Tyranid list and getting yourself on a winning formula and a winning start. So this is going to be some basic building blocks to kind of get you kind of thinking about how you build your army, because at the moment people are doing very well with Tyranids. And I was going to do a video specifically on that, but you know I hate the meta, and that idea that there is a meta when in my mind there really isn't. And I know we've had tons of arguments in the comments, and keep them coming, guys, because I love reading them. But I still don't believe there's a meta. There's no international tournament circuit going. We are very much in little brackets, but it's great reading what people think are good and what people think are bad. And at the moment, a lot of the top players think that Tyranids are now just outside the very best armies in the games. So that's great to hear, I suppose. And you know, it's what I've been saying since day one of 9th edition. So it's great to see some other people that are believing what I'm saying as well. And that's what you guys need to buy into as well, because Tyranids are a great army, and I'm going to tell you how we get the best out of it. So when you're building your Tyranid list and you're starting from the ground up, the first thing you need to think about is how your style is going to play out within the army. Because the great thing about Tyranids is they can be built in many different ways. You can build them as a very shooty army, as a pretty good combat orientated army, even though that's tough, or you can build them as a ball-controlled swarm army. Now, all three builds are viable and do work, right? And with every single one, you do need elements, potentially of all of them, or at least another one of those archetypes. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. It doesn't work, really. So this is how you're going to start thinking about it. So that's your first thing. So how do you want to build your army? So let's talk about how we build all three of those. If we're going to go for shooty, which in my mind is probably still the strongest build for Tyranids on the smaller boards now, with lots of great options, lots of strong shooting, lots of accurate shooting, we can do very well with it. So if we're thinking about building a shooting army, we're straight away going to be building around the Kronos, the Kronos High Fleet. So that's your first point. So you want anything that is going to benefit from that. When it sits still, it's going to be re-rolling ones to hit. So we want stuff that is going to utilize around that. So we're thinking about that with everything. If we want to build any other factors in there, we're probably going to have to be looking at additional detachments. So generally we want to try and fix all of this into a battalion or into a brigade. So that's what we're thinking about. If you can hear snoring, that's not people getting bored of the video. That's my pugs, my dog's in the background, so apologies there, guys. So that is our Kronos way of building. If we're going to go for combat, there are a couple of builds we can go for. We can start potentially looking at some of the build your own detachments, but solely we're probably thinking about going for Kraken, or we're thinking about going for Behemoth. Those are our two ones that are very much going to benefit from that combat orientated feel. And then the last one being Leviathan. If we're going to go for Leviathan, what we're probably going to want to think about is we're going to think about trying to make those little bugs a little bit more of a pain to get rid of. So to do that, we're going to go Leviathan. So they are basically our ways that we're going to build. So when you're starting to think, where are you going to start to build your army? Are you going to build shooting? Are you going to build build controlled? Or are you going to build combat? If you're going to build in one of those ways, that's the way you probably want to be looking at building that army. So that's your starting point. Then you're going to think about, how am I going to start to put this list together? So to do that, first of all, let's start off with how we're going to heavily input that list. So we're always thinking about our cap strategy. And if you haven't seen the cap videos, I'll try and put some links down there, but they're in our archive, so you can see all the cap videos and exactly what you always need to be thinking about, because you need to win the missions. So you're always going to be thinking about your control, you're going to be thinking about your aggravate, and you're going to be thinking about your power, and that will very much fit into these styles. So let's start off with your HQs. So to build our HQs, again, we're going to be thinking about how that's impacting in our build. So if we're going to go for a shooty type style list, what we need to make sure that we've got support elements to make sure that shooting's going to work. So we're going to need neurophropes to basically to make sure those psychic powers are effectively going off on our Chronos creatures. Also, we're going to make sure that we've got the support from that psychic ability, making sure that we're getting that feel no pain, that catalyst off on key units as well. And we're also using these as to make sure that we've got that synapse web as well. So neurophropes work very, very well in that feature. They work better than more your aggressive attacking features. Also, maybe it's worth thinking about your hive tyrants that are on foot with potentially heavy venom cannons. And it's also worth thinking about malanthropes, because malanthropes are also going to give you that -1. So they're your HQ options for your shooting battery, if you like. So you'll be looking probably at one of those three. If you really, really want to keep things cheap and cheerful, you may be thinking about a Tyranid Prime, but the reality is most of the time you're going to be thinking about one of those options. So bear that in mind when you're thinking about that Chronos HQ. Then if we're going to move into our aggressive combat orientated list, you're probably going to be thinking about a Broodlord. Broodlords are great now and well worth investing your points in. So think about maybe a Broodlord instead of that Neurophrope, or instead of the instead of your Malanthrope and your Neurophrope and your Hive Tyrant. So the Broodlord's a great one. The Hive Tyrant then maybe comes in with wings, because he's great, because the ability to come out of combat then recharge with the wings really helps. So it's another great one to go with. You may be not completely discounting the Neurophrope, but that's probably the way you want to go with, is around that type of build for HQs. Maybe if you're building in some assault Tyranid warriors, maybe you're thinking about a Prime, but on the whole you're probably thinking Broodlords. They still work really well within a Kraken detachment, and they synergize incredibly well with things like Dimmacarons and Scythe Turagils, as well as, you know, other options there. Also, of course, you have the ultimate force, which is the Swarm Lord, and he is made perfectly for your Kraken detachment. I'm going to make those units even quicker. So there's your Kraken style. Now within your Horde feel, so you're going to go now for your Leviathan style. So for the Leviathan, you need to make sure you've got your synapse web covering your whole army, because it needs it for that 6-up feel no pain. So for that, again, we want neurophropes. They're relatively cheap. You're also going to want malanthropes, because malanthropes are making sure that we've got that -1. So they're very, very good options for there. Also, you know, potentially you're looking at primes because you're keeping it cheap, but you want to always take into account that with your Horde ball control army, you want to keep things cheap as possible. So you're probably not necessarily investing on a Swarm Lord or Hive Tyrants, particularly because those are the things that are the ones that they're going to go after. You want to keep things as cheap and cheerful and keeping your points down. So that's where you're going with that. So there's your HQ. Now, bear in mind this video is going on quite long, so if you want more detail on these, please put in the comments below, or become a member of our Patreon service where we can talk about things in detail. But let's go into troops now. So for troops choice, this is where it's maybe a little bit more, you've got some options here. So within the Chronos feel, you know, what you're going to think about is you're going to want something that is going to control, but you're also going to want something that's going to potentially aggravate, and you're going to want something that's going to stop people getting to those shooting elements. So there's nothing wrong with maybe going for some Hormagaunts. You can see my previous video on Hormagaunts to help you think about how they are maybe a better option than they've been previous. Termagants make an absolute great shield as well. And then don't discount things like Rippers, because Rippers are going to be great at jumping on objectives that maybe your slightly slower, more static army are not going to go for. So Rippers are a great inclusion, so have a think about them. Warriors maybe not so much in this particular list, but again, you've got to have some element of control, so you've got to think where that's coming from. So Warriors are not to be discounted, but probably Termagants, Hormagaunts with some Rippers for some ball control elements in there work very well and synergize with that. Now we go on to our Kraken detachment. Now there's nothing to say we don't maybe mix in some tiny small units of Gene Stealers, extremely quick, can grab an objective, can take out some small fringe units as well, but let's not invest lots of points on them. They're not as good as they used to be, too expensive and too fragile. But they can still do a job. So potentially we're not going to discount them, particularly with the Broodlord running around for some extra support. They can do a job still, but we're probably more looking at Hormagaunts for that super speed. You know, we're maybe still looking at Termagants, but to be honest, we're probably going to ignore the Termagants because we just want pace and we want to get into your opponent's face. We want to make sure that we're using that aggravate as much as we possibly can. But we are potentially considering Warriors. Warriors can potentially do a job there. They can make them quick. They can play that control role pretty well. The Hormagaunts and Rippers are probably where we're at in that Kraken style troops choice. Moving on into Leviathan, it's all about bodies, but don't discount the fact that we're probably going to want some Warriors, maybe again for some synapse. So some splatterings of small 3-man cheap and cheerful warrior units can do a job very well there within that detachment. But generally we want as many bodies as possible. Termagants are great for this, with an extra layer of Hormagaunts again, just to make sure you're keeping your opponent as far as possible. You're playing very much the layer game, so you're playing lots and lots of layers to keep your opponent away from the middle of the board to take ball control. So that's how we're going to build that in, but making sure we keep that synapse web really strong. And then after we've got our troops, so now we've got everything that we need. So we're not going to go through every category now. We're going to talk about how we then, now we've got our must-haves in place, how we're going to really complement those builds. So let's start off with Kronos. Of course, we want shooting, power and dominance here. So we want Hive Guard. Maybe we want one big juicy unit of 5 or 6, probably 5, but maybe we're going to go with more. They are quite expensive, but they are one of the strongest units that Tyranids have the ability to field. And with that double shoot, they're amazing. If you've got 2 units, you've maybe got a little bit of redundancy there, but we are talking about a lot of points. So maybe 1 unit's the way to go for. But it depends whether you love them, or depends whether you're used to playing on boards with loads of terrain, because they love loads of terrain. Then we've got the Exocrine, a great option. And again, there's nothing to say you can't run multiple of them. They are very good, but one for me is where the magic sweet spot is. So you can use the stratagem on him. You can really utilize that potential extra damage from the other stratagems, and you can load this guy up, make him even tougher. So minimum, let's go with 1 unit of Hive Guard. We go with an Exocrine, and then let me throw it in there. Let's think about the Barbed Turgil. He is amazing, really good. That strong strength, that resilience with, 2-up save, toughness 8. He's an absolute bulk of a beast. You can give him a 5-up invuln, and he is a absolute all-star. A little bit more points, but really good. Chuck him in there. That gives you a fire base that will deal with anything. And then after that, you just a case of layering on what you want. Do you want to go 2 Barbed Turgils? Do you want to go 3 Exocrines? Do you want to go 2 beefy units of Hive Guard? How do you want to fit it out? But these are your power units. These are the units that are going to win the game for you. Excuse me, losing my voice. And these are the ones that you want to maximise your points into. So think about how you're going to do that. So that's the key part of the Kronos. That is the key part. Then we're going to talk about the Kraken. Now, so in the Kraken, you have to have that Swarm Lord, really. He's key. And they're going to pair him up with Demacherons because they are lightning. Then you're also going to combine that with Broodlords as well, and you're going to apply that pressure. You're going to have your hordes of Hormagaunts that are getting forward quickly, that are taking ball control. They're going to do the business. So the key thing with those is, the key thing with your combat is you want those Dimmercaron. They are absolutely key to that force. I mustn't discount Behemoth, and for Behemoth, you can consider some of those deep striking units. You know, things like Morlocks, things like Trigons Primes, because you can make them more reliable to get in combat. But the reality is, where the power's at the moment is Broodlords, is Swarmlord, is Dimmercarons. Scythe Tyrigils come in there as well. They're also pretty good. But those are your all-stars in that power part of your Kraken list. Then in the Leviathan, we're going to keep it cheap and cheerful, guys. The key units there is all about those Zoanthropes. You want batteries of Zoanthropes to make sure that you're going to put real good support. These are amazing control units, but they can also do damage as well. So they're in there causing mayhem, and probably paired up with some juicy units of warriors as well that are also control. They're also going to cause damage, and that's all paired up with your majority of your body of your army, which is just heaving tons of troops that are congesting the board, getting in your opponent's face and winning you the mission. And that's how you're going to win the game with Leviathan. So these are the things to think about. The other little layers to think on is just, we want to think about that control within those powerhouses. So, you know, if you're going for that Kraken, you're going for those Kronos, think about how you're going to really control the middle of the board, while those units either within your Kronos side are sitting at the back and putting in the damage within your Kraken in their face. Think about, again, Zoanthropes being a really key part of potentially holding the middle field, scoring you some easy points. And then the mastermind behind it, those Lictors. Make sure they're in pretty much every single one of those builds. They're almost a must-have. Drop them in. They're great for taking those objectives. If you use those parts and you think about how you're building it and you keep to the cap strategy, there are multiple ways of building some exciting, really cool Tyranid lists. We can sit down and we can start breaking them down into specific lists. But what I want you guys to do, where I believe there is no meta at the moment, we just have some great units that really perform well in a 9th edition format, is get out there, get creative, have some fun with your lists. Let me know what's working well for you, what I'm missing out on, what are your all-stars, and we'll discuss it in the comments below. And I'll come back next week with some more cool Tyranid tactics for you. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.